Ahoy! Today the dev update for December finally came out, and in that they announced changes to the Winter Convergence, territory control, a new expedition, and finally the roadmap. This comes with many much requested features, but before we get into those, a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Paragon the Overprime, a free-to-play, team-based, third-person shooter action MOBA that also has plenty of melee characters if you're not into shooters. While the game comes with the standard layout of 3 lanes, a jungle, and 5 players per team, there is also a major twist. There are multiple portals on the map that can frequently be used and for example allow you to teleport from duo straight to solo for a quick and easy gank. In combination with the short path between lanes and the option to sprint while out of combat, this makes for very action-packed and high-speed gameplay. Being built on Unreal Engine 4, Paragon the Overprime also looks extremely nice and runs very smooth. And if you like theory crafting, there are tons of items that can massively change how your character plays and feels. If this got you interested in Paragon the Overprime, you can check out my video soon for a more in-depth look at the game, or you can check it out in early access on Steam and Epic Games from the 8th of December. It's completely free to play, and the link is down in the description. Huge thanks to Paragon the Overprime for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to today's topic. Let's begin with the most important part, the roadmap. The devs have specifically said that this is not a hard commit and things can change, so don't expect anything of this to be guaranteed, but these are the plans for the near future. In spring we'll see the Empyrean Forge expedition, which is the first part of a 2-part story. In this expedition our enemies are Varangians and there will also be a lot of fire. The devs also mentioned that this is the first time we're facing humanoids as an enemy type in an expedition, and there may be new itemization coming with that, so I'm expecting we'll likely see drops with Humanoid Ward and Humanoid Bane from the expedition. Also in spring we'll finally see the much requested gear set storage system so you can quickly switch between different gear sets. There is a new event called the Springtide Bloom event. This will give towns a makeover, similar to the winter event for example, and one of the activities you will be doing during the event is harvesting springtide flowers and spraying the bugs around them and then turning them in for tokens. The last major change announced for spring is improving the main story quest further. The questlines in Weaver's Fen and Brightwood will see a similar overhaul as we've already seen in the starting zones. That brings us to the summer changes. The first one of those is Transmog. You'll be able to copy the look from gear that you collected in-game and transfer it onto other pieces. The next feature they're introducing are raid groups with up to 20 people. So far there is no mention of this being used in PvP or anything like that, but what they said this will definitely be needed for is the one PvE raid that is coming out in summer, the Sandworm Elite Trial. They also told us that they expect this trial to be extremely difficult and that you'll need to max everything in order to be able to defeat this. I honestly expected this much earlier because there was already so much info about the trial in the game, and you can even see the arena in the background here, which is the same one that I discovered ages ago, so I'm not really sure why they pushed this back so far. But let's talk more about the other features first before we talk about the timing. Another thing that will be added in summer is cross-World Outpost Rushw, so you can play between different servers. And last but not least, there will also be the Summer Medleyfaire Event again, with some new features. Additionally, the devs are planning to release new hard gem runes over time, as well as doing various quality of life improvements and add new cinematics. So far there is no mention of any new weapons or mounts, and the territory push changes that they were talking about in an earlier dev show is also something that is not on this roadmap so far. Let's next talk about the upcoming changes for December, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts on the roadmap. The first thing we'll see in December is the Winter Convergence event returning. That means we can do the Gleamite farm again, there will be presents again, and there will be the holiday towns again as well. This year this also includes Brimstone Sands being decorated. There's a new enemy with the Winter Convergence event. This is the Winter Warrior. This is a boss similar to the Halloween boss that will spawn some ads and require roughly 15 to 20 people to complete comfortably. Along with that there will also be new rewards and quests. Also in December we are getting the Starstone and Amrine crossover mutated expedition. Starstone and Amrine are actually connected in the lore in-game, and you can actually see elements of each other in the dungeons as well, and now they're putting them into one dungeon. They changed the pathing through the dungeon though, so it's actually sped up a little bit. It's not like you're gonna run both dungeons in their entirety. I already played this mutation on PTR and I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun one, but I was also originally a fan of Starstone. The territory control changes are finally coming into the game, and there are 3 different aspects to this. The first ones are regarding shell companies, so when a company forms an additional company or multiple additional companies in order to be able to avoid things like war windows overlapping when owning multiple towns. The devs don't want that, and they're introducing a variety of features to prevent it from happening. The first one is the company leave cooldown. Once you leave a company, you cannot participate in any territory control activity for 72 hours. This means quickly switching between companies is no longer an option. War rosters also get new limitations on the amount of mercenaries you can take into a war, so people outside of the company. In defense wars, you now have a maximum of 10 mercenaries, so you will have to have 40 of your own players, which can be quite difficult for companies that aren't fully stacked. On attack, this limitation is still 25 players, so half of your players have to be from your own company. Additionally, players have a daily war limit. They can only do up to 1 attack and 1 defense per day, and this resets every day at 5 AM. This limit doesn't just affect your character, it affects your account. So if you have multiple characters on the same server, they will share cooldowns. You can still have wars on other servers. Crafting also receives changes. A lot of recipes no longer depend on having a crafting station upgraded, especially those that generally have flexible ingredients or are more basic stuff. Think for example normal health pots versus coatings, or normal hearty meals versus specific recipes that give you specific buffs. This is so that PvEers are being influenced a little bit less by what is happening in terms of PvP and town ownership. However, a lot of the named items that you can craft will remain locked behind higher tier crafting stations. Also, town income will still depend on having your stations upgraded, so there's still incentive to do that. As a bonus, highly upgraded stations will now have ASOS discounts when crafting. And on the topic of upgrades, there is a change to town upgrades directly. Because town boards no longer provide a lot of XP and are therefore useless, a lot of towns have had issues upgrading sufficiently. Now, the amount of contribution required to complete town board projects is heavily reduced. They said it's around a 70 to 80% cut in requirements. So actually upgrading a town should be much easier. And that brings us back to the roadmap. Now, I'm very excited for a lot of the changes announced here. I especially like the gear sets and Transmog, and on the more content-focused side in terms of things to do, I like the new expedition and the raids as well. What concerns me is the pace of things. I was hoping that they would ride the momentum that they got with Brimstone Sands, because it got such a positive reception and so many people came back, especially along with the fresh start servers. And it seems like they're kind of doing the opposite and slowing down a fair bit. I know that they said they want to focus on quality, but it didn't indicate that they were intending to slow down to this degree. That especially concerns me on the PvP side of things. For example, the changes they were talking about with pushing territories I think are very necessary, because at the moment it's one of the most mind-numbing activities in the game, and they would be better off just scrapping it and just giving us a random roll on who gets to declare for the war without any territory pushing at all. When you're at the point where not having a piece of content would actually be better than having that piece of content, that's fairly concerning in my eyes. We're also not seeing any mention of any war changes, any PvP mode changes or anything along those lines, and I would really hope that we would get some. I still believe that out of all MMOs, New World has the best framework for PvP. They just need to actually lean into it more. I'm just not sure how long people can be kept busy with OPR and arenas, especially since they also don't seem to be introducing the practice wars anytime soon where other people could participate. A lot seems to hinge on the Sandworm trial, but I honestly don't know what portion of the player base is actually super interested in that. I know I personally am, but generally speaking, I don't really know how many raiders New World has and how many people are content just doing normal expeditions or PvPing. We'll have to wait and see how things develop, but I can't say that I'm not at least a bit worried about the amount of content that we'll be seeing. Especially when a patch like Brimstone showed how much hype there is for larger pieces of content and how many people can be reached with that. Then again, it is somewhat interesting that the roadmap doesn't mention winter at all this time, so it could be possible that we see a very big content drop in winter, maybe potentially even an add-on. But for now, that's just overly hopeful levels of speculation. Once we find out anything new, I'll of course let you know here, so please consider subscribing and clicking the bell. In the next days, we'll also talk about some sword and shield issues currently in the game. Thanks for watching, Duke Sloth, out.